awoke with your neck stiff and your throat dry, the sun's heat still a distant promise, yet the air already hung heavy with a suffocating dryness. Beneath your feet, the cracked earth stretched endlessly, weary and scorched by an unforgiving sun that had not yet risen high enough to scorch completely, but whispered its implacable intent. Nearby, the Nile's ancient bed, the river that once breathed life into this land, retreated further each day, its waters shrinking back, revealing banks that had once been mere dreams of dry dust. Every step you took toward the village echoed into the silence of a river, refusing to quench the thirst of the earth. You felt the coarse fabric of your tunic cling stubbornly to your skin, sweat refusing to dry, while a bitter dust scent raised itself from the drifting breeze. The dawn's muted colors stretched across the sky, a pale washed canvas with faint streaks of orange that lacked the warmth they once bore. Somewhere in the distance, the endless monotone song of crickets wove into a quiet hum of the wind. Barely moving, the sparse foliage left clinging to life. This stillness had a weight none before had borne. The once vibrant pulse of the Nile slowed to a reluctant whisper. You thought that if a mere weak cellular signal today would fray modern nerves, then how then could anyone endure a life bound to a river that simply vanished? No pings, no alerts, no reassurance, only silence and thirst. Your pulse beat slower, matched by the slow, deliberate rhythm of survival. Your task began with the sun still low, but rising, with careful, measured movements. You hoisted a heavy bucket, subdued by the exhaustion that wrapped around you like a second skin. You traced the familiar path toward the wells. Fields where water had once surged now lay bare. Your fingers brushed the rim of an empty cistern, the cool, rough stone beneath your touch, a small comfort amid the despair. For a fleeting moment, a gentle breeze tempted relief against your overheated skin, carrying just beyond hearing a faint murmur, perhaps a child's distant call or a bird's rare song, a small, fragile note of hope that stirred inside. As you labored, you repeated your cautious steps, turning and returning to check the stubborn lock on an old water storage gate, cold metal against your palm. To the sides, the village remained still but alive in small ways, the faint creaking of wooden doors, the distant clatter of pots, the soft shuffles of others sharing your quiet vigil against the dry fate swallowing your world. Then, just as the sun lifted higher, casting long, golden rays across the parched land, a flicker at the horizon caught your eye. At first, it was nothing more than a mere shift of shadow, a movement barely perceptible against the barren backdrop. You paused, breath hitching lightly, senses sharpening, as something unfamiliar drifted slowly into view, disrupting the uneasy calm. It could have been a figure, faint and distant, stepping into the haze, or perhaps the whisper of wind stirring dust differently. This small anomaly held a promise, a subtle shift, stirring a quiet dread that perhaps your hard-won routine was about to unravel. Ai, antes que Morfeu te pegue de vez, dá uma conferida rápida se você continua inscrito. Para alguns, o botão sumiu, e eu não quero que você perca as próximas histórias para dormir. Aproveita e deixa um like macio como um travesseiro. Me conta nos comentários de onde você nos ouve e que horas são aí. Sua interação mantém este cantinho de calma vivo. Valeu por fazer parte. You watch the figure flickering faintly against the heat-worn horizon. The air between you, thick with the kind of silence that presses heavy against your ears. Your breath slowed, the dry stillness weighing down on your chest as your eyes strained to catch more details. The shadow wavered where cracked earth met the boundary of the village, a fragile silhouette breaking the monotony of dust and heat. With a careful step, you moved forward, each footfall measured and deliberate, sending a soft crunch across the arid ground. The sun had climbed just enough to prick your skin with tentative warmth, but the bone dryness in the air persisted, an invisible dryness that crept beneath your tunic, clinging to your sweat-slicked skin. Your fingers brushed the stubborn lock once more, cold metal grounding you as you leaned into the uncertainty, hanging quiet between sun and shadow. A thin breeze stirred, threading itself through the few remaining leaves clinging to brittle branches nearby. You caught a faint scent of something foreign beneath the usual dust, a sharp tang, maybe the remnant of smoke or distant fires. Your senses fine-tuned, every subtle noise, every scent layered like a fragile whirl, rising from the land. The figure on the horizon was motionless now, or perhaps frozen in hesitation, as if caught between the decision to advance or retreat. Your heart ticked in sync with the slow, rhythmic song of the crickets, their hum weaving through the heat-thickened air like a tapestry of patience. The village around you remained quiescent. Wooden doors barely whispered as wind carried their creaks. Somewhere behind you, a soft shuffle suggested another awake, another caught in this unyielding quiet. Yet apart from these faint telltales of life, the emptiness around you was vast and still, an ocean of cracked earth waiting for something unseen. You lifted your gaze again to the shimmering haze, the distant outline hazier now. The figure had shifted slightly, steps so faint they felt more like a reluctant breath in the heat. You felt the coarse fabric of your tunic against your skin again, sweat unrelenting, the sharp dryness clawing at your throat. Every breath drew in a dry urgency, as if the air itself reminded you of scarcity. As you approached the edge of the village, the ground beneath your sandals changed. The hard, cracked surface gave way to patches of brittle grass and stones worn smooth by long neglect. The scent here was different, still dry, but with a whisper of earthier notes weaving softly beneath the dusty palate. A silent hint of life clinging stubbornly to this forsaken place. Your eyes caught the faint outline of a well, long unused, its stonework chipped and warm under the invisible pressure of the sun. You stepped closer, wary of unsettling the stillness, your hands brushing along the ridge of the well's wall. The stone was cool, a stark contrast to the fierce dryness that enveloped you. You traced your fingers over the lichen clinging to its surface, rough yet fragile, as if it too were a quiet survivor in this landscape slipping away. The quiet murmur of the village deepened, the ticking hand of a hidden clock measuring time in slow, deliberate waves. The weight in the air thickened, pressing against your skin and slow pulse alike. You shifted your footing, feeling the dust beneath your soles skitter lightly, recalling the countless empty journeys to wells that once brimmed with cool life, but now offered only hollow echoes. In this suspended moment, your ears caught a different sound. Something soft, but unmistakable. A faint, irregular tapping, like a distant heart fluttering in the vastness. You froze, senses reaching outward to trace its origin. It was neither wind nor bird. Closer now, deliberate. You turned toward the edge of the village, where an old wooden gate stood slightly ajar, its hinges squeaking beneath the weight of age and neglect. A slow, shallow breath escaped your lips as the tapping repeated, subtle but steady. You stepped forward cautiously, each movement deliberate, the dry heat prickling your skin as the afternoon sun traced long shafts of gold across the soil. The sound led you toward the gate, and your hand found the worn wood, grain rough against your palm. A bead of sweat traced its path down your temple, dry dust mingling with the salt of your skin. The tapping ceased suddenly. Silence plunged back, even heavier than before. You stayed still, listening as the hollow echoes of your own heartbeat filled the space. Light shifted across the cracked land, and in that frail sliver of moment, something moved just beyond the gate, too quick, too faint for your eyes to fully capture. You held your breath, the air tasting of dust, and waiting. Your legs tensed in quiet readiness, not for battle or flight, but for continuity, for survival in a world retreating beyond reach. The unease nestled deep under your skin, a slow, simmering dread matched only by the fragile stirrings of hope that whispered in that fleeting reveal. As the sun sunk lower, casting long shadows that stretched like faded fingers across the earth, you realized this was no mere mirage nor random shift of dust. Something, someone, was coming, tracing a path you could neither yet trace nor turn away from. And just as dusk began to cool the air, a faint echo slipped. From the shadows, a soft, deliberate sound, the unmistakable whisper of footsteps approaching from the east. You stood frozen at the edge of the village, the dry heat settling around you like a thick, restless sheet. The fading light shaped the land into muted shades of ochre and burnt sienna, the cracked earth stretching out before you in slow, deliberate waves. Your lungs drew shallow breaths, each inhale tasting of dust and distant smoke. A faint yet persistent reminder of things no longer spoken aloud. The air was unbearably still, save for the faintest murmur of leaves too tired to flutter, and the whisper of a breeze carrying secrets you could almost grasp but never quite hold. Your eyes remained fixed on the old wooden gate, its frame weathered and sagging slightly, the sentinel barely resisting the pull of time. The faint echo of that tapping, soft, irregular, loomed behind your ear, like the hesitant heartbeat of the village itself. Your hand reached out slowly, the rough wood grain uneven beneath your fingertips. Each small touch was a whisper of stories past, of voices long silenced by scarcity and silence. You hesitated, feeling the coolness of the shade that the gate offered against the sun's dying whisper. As the haze thickened on the horizon, the faint figure beyond the gate shifted again. It was indistinct, blurred by heat and distance, but the pause in its movement struck sharply against the persistent stillness. You felt the beating of your own heart slow, each pulse a steady drum in the otherwise hollow quiet. The weight of waiting pressed on your shoulders, firm yet unmoving, as the last vestiges of daylight slipped quietly away from the thirsty earth. Underfoot, the cracked soil gave way to small pebbles and brittle scraps of dried grass. The scent here was different, earthy and faintly sweet, lingering like a frozen breath from a time when the land was not so barren. You stepped forward cautiously, the soft crunch of your sandals barely disturbing the uneasy calm. Your senses stretched, focusing on the faint sounds woven beneath the desert's embrace, the subtle creak of a distant door, a whisper of animal movement hidden in shadows, the rhythmic chorus of the crickets weaving their slow song into the night. Your fingers brushed once more along the gate's fracture, feeling the coldness of rusted hinges beneath your palm. The faint scent of smoke lingered more closely now, teasing your nose with flickering hope or a distant warning. Somewhere further along the village's edge, a faint flicker of light pulsed, small and unsteady, like the heartbeat of a dying ember strained to hold its glow. The sight wove into the fabric of the night, fragile and trembling beneath the vast silence that still stretched like a shroud. A soft, shuffling sound echoed nearby, subtle and hesitant. Your breath caught, and you turned slowly, eyes scanning the near darkness. The village held its breath with you, every creak and whisper amplified beneath a sky quickly darkening, but still warm. The ancient well stood stoic beside you, its stone rim cool and reassuring despite the dry weight of the air. Your hand rested against it briefly, a gesture of grounding before the unknown. The figure beyond the gate held still, a silhouette caught between hesitance and slow resolve. The tapping started again, a faint tattoo, deliberate yet uncertain. You felt the heat of the sun give way to the gradual chill of the coming night, the shift in temperature brushing your skin like a soft veil. Your mind traced the faint outlines, the slow movement, the quiet breath of that presence, each detail etched sharply by the thickening shadows. A wave of silence lulled around you. The air held its breath just as you did. The taps now steady and rhythmic, drawing nearer without sound but in unmistakable rhythm. Time slowed, the weight of the moment nesting deep in your bones as you took a step back, then forward, each motion steeped in thoughtful caution. The village seemed to exhale, the tension folding gently into the night's cool arms. You felt the coarse fabric of your tunic cling anew, sweat prickling cold beneath its threads, the bitter dust lifting and settling like forgotten memories around your stiff limbs. The scent of smoke sharpened again, faint yet unmistakable, a trace of far-off fires, or perhaps the last remnants of a burnt offering in the land's waning light. Your fingers tightened around the edge of the gate, the rough grain biting gently at your palm. Farther along, a soft, dull glow moved, flickering low, as if summoned from the earth itself. The village remained still, its ancient bones creaking faintly as the night deepened. You balanced on the edge between what was and what might come, the steady tapping now mixed with a soft, dragging sound. Steps. The rustling of fabric, the brush of movement, the breath drawn just beyond comprehension. You swallowed, hard, feeling the tightness in your throat and the ache in your arms as you adjusted your grip on the bucket you carried. The thirst inside you was mirrored by the thirst of the land, both hungry for something just beyond reach. Yet here, at the threshold of the unknown, you were caught between dread and a fragile, pulsing hope. The taps ceased suddenly. A breath held, a pause so deep it seemed the earth itself had stopped turning. Then, stepping into the narrow sliver of moonlight, piercing through the gathering darkness, a shape emerged fully, an outline carved by fatigue and resolve, tattered and rooted in uncertainty. Your pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the raw, undeniable weight of the unspoken. And just as the first stars blinked open above the village, the figure raised. A hand slowly, deliberately, and spoke, voice low and carrying a hollow urgency that rippled cold and sure through the still air. The figure stood just beyond the gate, its outline blurred and wavering where the last thin light met the growing shadow. You could sense its hesitation, a stillness not born of calm, but caught in the fragile tension between hesitation and resolve. The quiet pulse of the village seemed to hold you both in a suspended breath, the very soil beneath your sandals, eager but uncertain. Faint light brushed the cracked earth, folding the land into patterns of ochre and shadow that shifted with the slow sinking of the sun. Your hand lingered on the rough wood of the gate, the worn grain biting gently at your palm as you tried to steady your breath. The air tasted of dust and smoke, dry memories that floated with each reluctant breeze. Somewhere behind you, the rustic murmur of the village persisted. A door's soft creak, a whispered shuffle, small sounds rippling through the thick silence like beads of water on parched stone. The figure, though still faint, began to move with the slowness of something burdened by weariness, stepping forward with careful, deliberate motions that stirred faint whispers of dust at its feet. You took a cautious step outward, your sandals whispering against the earth, gravel and brittle grass crunching beneath each measured footfall. The heat had begun to leave the air, replaced by a coolness that slipped like a silk scarf over your skin. The wide sky, once a pale, fading canvas, now deepened into twilight blues and soft purples. The edges blurring where desert met dusk. Somewhere overhead, a lone cricket's steady song threaded through the quiet, steady and unhurried. Your eyes traced the figure's movements, wary yet compelled. It carried no burden visible, but seemed weighted by invisible things you could almost feel. Something heavy enough to slow its steps to a near crawl. The dust clung in soft clouds around them, a silent witness to the slow crawl of time. The faint scent of smoke lingered between you both, sharper now. A swirl of charred earth and distant embers, pushed faintly by the shifting wind. You paused, heart slow, muscles taut, as that scent wove through the air like an unspoken message, fragile and urgent. The figure stopped at last, just beyond the gate, its form outlined against the darkening sky. Your breath caught the moment. Stretched thin, a thread pulled tight and trembling. You felt the dry scrape of your tunic against your skin, the slow trickle of sweat cooling in the gentle evening air. You reached out, fingers still resting lightly on the gate's edge, the cold metal of its hinges distant but grounding beneath your palm. A soft rustle came from the other side, barely more than a sigh caught in the night. The figure's shadow seeped deeper into the darkness, but the edges sharpened slightly, a sign of life breaking through the haze. Your pulse slowed, thudding a quiet rhythm that matched the distant chirping. Your senses acutely attuned to the faintest shifts, the almost silent brush of fabric, the scrape of footsteps on stone. Your gaze flickered upward, just in time to catch a sudden flutter from the sky, a moth or small bird weaving loosely through the cooling air. Its wings, pale and fragile, caught the last golden threads of dusk before folding silently into nothing. The moment was brief but piercing, a delicate light in the consuming twilight. You allowed yourself a breath then, slow, patient, held between hope and dread. The figure shifted again, slow and cautious, pressing one hand lightly against the gate. The sound was slight, a whisper of wood and weathered rust, but it cut through the silence like the softest knock, tentative, deliberate. Something deep inside you stirred, a quiet alarm wrapped in fragile curiosity. You drew your hand back, shoulders straightening as your feet met the unyielding earth, steady beneath the fading light. The village around you settled deeper into stillness. The few remaining leaves on the brittle trees whispered faintly with the breeze, mingling with the subtle chorus of insects and the far-off echo of settling embers. The well beside you stood as silent as ever, its cool stone rim a small island against the vast expanse of cracked earth and dust. Your senses sharpened to every nuance, the scent of distant fires growing sharper, the faint metallic tang of dry heat lingering in the air, the soft scrape of stone beneath your sandal. The figure sighed, a breath almost lost to the thickening night, and then moved again, a slow pulling motion forward, the deliberate scrape of tired boots. You stepped away from the gate, giving space, but eyes locked on that hesitant advance. The uncertainty wrapped around you like a cloak, heavy and unyielding, the past and present blending in the low fold of twilight. Your fingers flexed, restless, and your throat tightened with the dry ache born of long thirst. The figure took one final step forward, crossing the threshold of the gate, and suddenly the night seemed to hold its breath a little tighter. Your body tensed, larger in the moment between what was known and what awaited. The scent of smoke flared again, richer now, mingling with the earth's dry bitterness, echoing of long-lost warmth. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet tremor reached out, neither fear nor hope, but something suspended, fragile, ready to be discovered. And just as your eyes adjusted fully to the dark, something flickered in the figure's hand, small and glowing, a faint ember breathing light into the vast, thirsty night. The ember in the figure's hand pulsed faintly, a fragile heartbeat of light against the deepening blue of night. You held your breath as the shadows whispered around you, the village folding into quiet mystery beneath an endless sky. Each slow, careful movement of the newcomer seemed weighted with an exhaustion that mirrored the parched land itself. The dry air clung stubbornly to your skin, the coarse fabric of your tunic tracing each twitch of muscle, each tentative step toward the gate you had only just released. The cool stone of the well beside you pressed against your fingertips, an anchor amid the uncertainty that rippled through the heavy stillness. You felt the weight of your bucket hang loosely in your arm. Its chill comfort faded, replaced by the faint pulse of anxious expectation that twined tightly inside your chest. The figure's silhouette blurred but resolute, its slow advance stirring, whisper of dust that slipped like mist across the cracked earth. You listened intently. The only sounds, the distant creaking of a door, the subtle rustling of dry leaves barely stirred by a breeze reluctant to disturb the silence. Somewhere far off, the slow, rhythmic song of crickets wove steadily through the night, a soft tapestry that cloaked the land in quiet patience. Each breath you drew was shallow, tasting of dust and faint smoke, a trace of distant fires that once promised warmth, but now only whispered warnings. As the figure crossed the threshold of the gate, the ember's glow flickered once, casting trembling patterns on worn wood and sun-baked clay. The light revealed ragged edges of clothing, threads worn thin by time and hardship, skin marked by the hard kiss of relentless sun. This was no stranger arriving with grand purpose or loud announcement, only a weary presence, carrying with it a slow thread of fragile hope tangled with the heavy weight of weariness. Your heart beat steady, matching the soft tap of footsteps shifting hesitantly on the gravel beneath you. The buzz of insects merged with the almost imperceptible scrape of fabric, the sound like a distant sigh caught between breath and shadow. You stepped back slightly, mindful to keep the fragile boundary between yourself and this newcomer. A silent invitation held taut by mutual caution. The night deepened around you, chilly winds whispering through the brittle branches overhead, carrying the sharp scent of dry earth and the faintest trace of smoke, the kind that clings stubbornly, neither threatening nor comforting, but always present as a subtle reminder. Your hand brushed again along the stone rim of the well, coolness seeping through rough skin like a fleeting comfort in the lingering heat. The ember flickered once more, tiny sparks drifting up and vanishing into the cool night air, leaving a faint trail of warmth behind. The figure moved to stand fully beside you, their breath low and steady, inhaling the dry night as you did, both bound by the cruel, slow march of survival. For a long moment, you simply held space together, the quiet between you, heavy with everything left unspoken. The endless thirst, the fading land, the slow surrender of life, once vibrant and sure. A distant murmur floated on the wind, a soft, forgotten song carried faintly from the fields beyond the village, like a memory brushing the edges of your senses. You closed your eyes briefly, letting the sound thread through your thoughts, a fragile counterpoint to the harshness surrounding you. When you opened them, the figure shifted slightly, the glow in their hand pulsing again, steady and insistent. The village around you seemed to hold its breath. The cracks in the earth stretched out like veins, tired and eternal, beneath a sky now embroidered with the first hesitant stars. You sensed a tremor in the quiet, subtle yet profound, a moment poised on the cusp between what had been and what might yet be. Slowly, the figure lowered the ember, its glow casting soft shadows along the ancient walls and broken pathways. You noticed the faint glint of eyes, reflecting not just tiredness, but a spark of urgent resolve. No words passed between you, only the heavy, shared weight of waiting, the careful calculus of trust, measured in glances, and the silent rhythm of survival. The ember flickered, then dimmed, leaving you both cradled in darkness, softened by moonlight. Yet even as the land seemed to exhale its dryness into the cool night, a new sound emerged, low, uneven breathing, the faint shuffle of movement drawing quietly from the figure's side. Your senses tightened, alert but cautious. The faint brush of fabric against stone, the whisper of tired steps pressing onward. These were not signs of threat, but of a slow revelation, a secret unveiled in the patient weaving of moments. The air felt thicker now, charged with the slow unfolding of something neither entirely welcome nor wholly foreboding. You could taste the bitter dust on your lips, feel the rough edges of your own exhaustion mingling with the stranger's quiet presence, and beneath it all, a deep pulse, a slow, insistent beat calling out from the shadows, threading through earth and bone alike. The figure shifted once more, glancing briefly back toward the dark horizon, where the faintest glow still lingered like a promise. You held your breath again, as a shape emerged from their side, slender and tentative, revealed in the dim light as a small bundle wrapped tightly against the night's chill. There was no need for words. The silent offering was clear, a fragile connection in a world unraveling. And just as the last flicker of ember died, swallowed by the gathering dusk, a whisper rose on the dry wind, a soft, urgent breath of change stirring through the cracked earth. The night waited with you, hanging close, heavy and expectant, until from the quiet, a single word slipped through the dark, low and deliberate, breaking the delicate stillness. Follow. The ember's faint glow trembled in the figure's hand, a fragile pulse against the deepening veil of night. You stood still, the sweep of air cool where heat had reigned, the dry scent of earth mingling with faint smoke, curling like a reluctant ghost. Your breath matched the quiet rhythm of the land, slow, deliberate, weighted with something unspoken but keenly felt. The village held its silence tightly, as if the very bones of the place listened alongside you. Your fingers rested once again on the well's worn stone rim, its cool surface arresting the prickling dry heat on your skin. The rough texture, dotted with lichen, anchored the moment, a steady rhythm beneath the rising tension. The bucket in your hand felt heavier now, though its weight was only physical. The weight in your chest felt far more cumbersome. The figure's slow steps shifted faint dust in thin clouds at your feet. Your eyes searched the wavering outline, the heavy clothing hanging loosely, strands shaking softly in the breeze, no stronger than a whisper. A soft sigh slipped from the figure, barely audible, but carrying a hollow exhaustion. You inhaled the mix of smoke and dry earth again, that sharp tang pressing lightly against your tongue, a reminder that these lands had endured long, yet never without cost. The steady tapping resumed, slower now, more cautious, each tap a word unspoken. You shifted your weight, your sandals crunching softly on cracked soil and crushed leaves. Every small sound was drawn out, thick in the dry air. Around you, the village seemed to breathe with you. Creaks of old wood and the faint murmur of shifting shadows, sustaining the quiet covenant of night. The fluttering of wings, soft and tentative, stirred overhead. A moth, perhaps, fragile against the dimming sky. For a long moment, neither you nor the figure spoke. Instead, space grew around you. The delicate distance between trust and uncertainty stretched taut, stretching like the twilight itself. The ember lowered slightly, casting flickering shadows that danced on cracked earth and faded stone walls. In those shifting shapes, you glimpsed stories life had carved here, worn yet enduring. The figure's eyes glinted faintly, reflecting not just weariness, but a trembling resolve that stirred a fragile hope within you. The night deepened, cool fingers weaving through the village's sleeping limbs. The scent of smoke grew sharper still, hinting at fires, distant yet real, burning somewhere beyond the horizon. It was not a comfort, nor a threat, but a reminder of change. A soft rustle drew your gaze again to a slender bundle pressed close at the figure's side, shadowed and careful. A small weight cradled in patient arms, wrapped in threads worn thin but taut with intent. You inhaled slowly, the arid air filling your lungs with each reluctant breath. The dry dust clung to your throat, the odor of smoke flickering faint memories beneath your ribs. The ember pulsed one last time, casting a pale ray of wavering light that painted the figure's features in muted strokes, a face carved from sun and hardship, framed by sighs of wind and unyielding shadow. A breath escaped you, long and low, mingling with the night's hush. You stepped back slightly, careful not to break the fragile balance between caution and kinship. The sound of fabric brushing rough stone, the measured steps drawing quiet nearer, wove between the steady chorus of crickets like an ancient song retold. It was a slow cadence, patient and unhurried, bearing the weight of countless worn stories beneath the vast sky. The figure's gaze flicked northward, toward the dark horizon where you had glimpsed the last embers of daylight. You caught a faint pulse, a distant flicker moving against the blackened backdrop. Too subtle to name or claim, the air grew thick with promise, and old fears tangled fiercely together. your skin prickled with the keen awareness of something vast unfolding just beyond sight. You turned again to the stranger's slow advance, every movement deliberate, beneath the drifting cloak of dusk. The ember's glow dimmed to a final glimmer before surrendering to the night's embrace. In that moment, your eyes adjusted fully to the darkness, catching the faintest outline of a second presence emerging, moving quietly from the figure's side. The small shape, shadowed and tentative, stepped into reluctant moonlight, a shape both fragile and familiar. You held your breath as silence swelled, tracing the soft, nocturnal sounds around you. This was a threshold, both literal and unseen, where old, cracked earth met uncertainty and change. The quiet weighed heavily, pressing not on the surface, but deep inside your ribs. It was a waiting, stretched taut, a stillness carrying the steady beat of hearts, both weary and wary. And then, from the edge of the shadowed village, a slow rustling broke the hush, something shifting, slow and deliberate. Not a threat, but a beckoning, a passage. Your senses sharpened, the scent of smoke thickening warmly, weaving through the dryness like a tether. Time settled into a hollow rhythm, the faint yet steady heartbeat of tomorrow, wrapped in dusk's fragile veil. You took a step forward, the dry ground crunching beneath you, and the slow, rhythmic sound that had led you here shifted with the night, soft footsteps blending with the persistent chorus of crickets and the whispering trees. The newcomer's whispered breath stirred the air as the faint glow of a second ember flickered to life between shadowed fingers, a fragile flame refusing to be forgotten. And as both small flames burned faintly close together, the figure's voice broke the night's delicate hold, low, certain, and carrying the weight of unsaid journeys. Come. The night clung tightly as the figure's faint flames merged with the heavy quiet of the village, casting fragile pools of flickering light against the cracked earth and time-worn walls. You stood just inside the gate, every sense sharpened beyond wariness. Your breath, shallow and raw, the cool weight of the stone well at your side was the only tangible certainty in the vast expanse of shifting shadows. Your fingers trembled, whether from cold or anticipation, you could not tell, as you tightened your grip on the handle of the empty bucket, its cold metal oddly comforting amidst the night's uncertain chill. The small ember pulsed gently in the figure's hand, the only pulse of warmth in a world that had long since given up its heat. A faint breeze whispered across the village, stirring with it the scent of smoke and distant earth, fragile traces of life and loss entwined. The air was thick, each inhalation tasting of dry dust and embers, as though the land itself exhaled its exhaustion slowly through the darkness. You took a measured step forward. The ground beneath your sandals shifted slightly beneath brittle grass and scattered stones, the soft crunch muted by the night. Somewhere in the distance, a worn wooden door groaned quietly as it swayed on its hinges. The sound stretched thin, like a sigh holding itself gently within the stillness. Above, pale stars blinked open one by one, their cold light wrapping the village like a delicate, distant promise. Your eyes never left the figure now standing beside you, a slow silhouette etched in the faint glow, draped in tattered cloth, speaking of journeys, both long and endless. Alongside them, the small bundle of quiet weight was cradled carefully, wrapped tightly against the creeping chill. The faint rise and fall of breathing tethered the silent companions to the rhythm of survival. Their shared presence, a fragile anchor against the expanse of solitude. For a long moment, the two of you remained still, bound by a quiet truce woven from exhaustion and necessity. The ember's light softened slightly, casting wavering shadows that shifted like slow, whispered memories along the ancient stones and cracked earth beneath your feet. The village itself seemed to exhale through its bones, settling into the embrace of nightfall with a weary grace. Your fingers brushed once again over the rough stone rim of the well, cool and steady beneath your touch. You closed your eyes briefly to the sharp scent rising from the air, the burnt edges of distant fires, the bitter grit of dry earth, the faint, elusive trace of something sweet beneath the surface, barely discernible as hope woven into hardship. When you opened them, the figure shifted slightly, their gaze veiled but intent, hidden beneath shadows. The silence between you stretched thin, taut as the cracked land underfoot. The ember flickered, sending brief streams of light that danced across the stranger's face, revealing contours carved by relentless sun and long nights. Lines of weariness softened into something harder to name, a quiet resolve, a weight carried unspoken. A distant murmur stirred, carried by the breeze that slipped gently among the skeletal trees. It was the slow, patient song of crickets, steady and unhurried, stitching a soft thread of sound through the empty spaces. You listened as the rustle of fabric and the faint scrape of worn boots blended seamlessly into the night's unfolding tapestry. Without warning, the figure took a slow step closer, the ember held protectively between weathered fingers. Its faint light pulsed again. A heartbeat in the dark, small yet insistent. You felt the invisible threads stretch taut between you, fragile yet unbreakable. Then the bundle moved slightly against the stranger's side. A soft breath, a subtle shift that was more felt than seen. The weariness in the night seemed to fold inward for a breath, leaving only the gentle, pressing quiet. Your own breath stalled, caught between the lingering ache of drought and the pulse of something new, something poised delicately on the edge of the future. The figure's gaze lifted toward the horizon, where the last pale glow of fading embers still clung, a soft line between dusk and dream. You followed the look, sensing the vast silence that stretched beyond, dark and unexplored. The trace of smoke twisted upward, curling like a whisper of flame against the heavy air. You stepped back slightly, your hand slipping away from the well's stone, your feet grounding you to the cracked earth. The bucket hung limply at your side, its emptiness mirrored the hollow weight pressing deep inside your chest. The night held its breath, and then, from the figure's lips, a single word emerged: "Come." The sound was neither a command nor a question, but a slow invitation threading through the shadows, soft as dust, yet carrying the weight of irrevocable change. Your gaze fumbled toward the small shape beside them once more, the silent bundle, breathing quietly as if the world still held space for fragile beginnings amid relentless endings. You paused, senses stretched taut as a thin veil, every detail magnified beneath the slow unfolding of night, the prickling chill pressing beneath your tunic, the sharp tang of smoke layered with earth on your tongue, the faint scratch of dry grass beneath your sandals. The ember's light flickered once more, casting the figure's face in trembling half-light. Then, as a last sliver of darkness folded across the village, the stranger turned, slow, deliberate, and extended the faint glow of the ember toward you, a silent beacon threading through empty space. The quiet between you deepened, a tether formed not of words, but of shared endurance and uncertainty. Your heart hung suspended in that fragile moment, poised before the slow step across the threshold, the beginning of a path that would pull you from the brittle edge of what was known into shadows whispering promises of survival and secrets yet to be revealed. You stand silently beneath the deepening cloak of night, the embers' flickering glow casting faint shadows along the crumbling walls of the village. The coolness of dusk seeps into your skin, a gentle reprieve from the harsh dryness that has clung so stubbornly throughout the day. The air tastes sharp, edged with the trace of smoke and earth, mingling in a breath that feels heavier now, charged with the weight of the unknown. Your hand falls lightly upon the rough stone of the well, its cool texture grounding you amid the shifting calm. The figure beside you shifts, careful not to disturb the fragile balance between presence and silence. The faint glow held in their palm pulses softly, a fragile heartbeat in the wide dark that stretches beyond the tired village. You notice the slight rise and fall of their chest beneath weathered cloth, the slow cadence matching the steady hum of your own ragged breath. Somewhere distant, a solitary cricket weaves its tireless song into the still air, a thread of life stretching thin but persistent. The ground beneath your feet is cracked and uneven, brittle grass pressing against your sandals with every measured step you take forward, drawn slowly into whatever this night may hold. The air around you shiver faintly, a whisper of movement caught in the tree's brittle skeletons, and the scent of smoke grows richer, curling upward like a hesitant promise or a quiet warning. Beneath the muted sky, vast and infinite, stars begin their slow ritual of emergence, pale pinpricks flickering softly against the gathering dark. You sense the bundle nestled at the figure's side, held with deliberate care. Its presence presses softly against the night, an unspoken fragility that cuts through the desert's harshness. You step back slightly, giving space, your gaze flickering between the ember's glow and the shadowed form it reveals. Weary, steady, burdened yet resolute. This is no stranger's sudden arrival, but a quiet offering, weight borne in silence and slow of charred wood. It brushes your cheek like an old memory, the sharp dryness pressing deep into your throat. You swallow carefully, the roughness lingering long after the breath has left your lips. The ember quivers once, casting fleeting light that dances over the cracks in the earth, tracing ancient lines of ruin and resilience beneath your tired feet. You watch as the figure's hand extends slowly toward you, the warmth of the small flame spreading faint tendrils of comfort into the cool air. The light sways, casting wavering patterns over the broken stones and the quiet hands resting next to the well's rim. Your fingers twitch, restless, a silent invitation winding through the heavy stillness. The village around you holds its breath. The faint murmur of shifting shadows slips beneath the soft rhythm of crickets, and the occasional crunch of dry leaves. Somewhere far off, a door creaks silently on its well-worn hinges, the sound fragile as a sigh, but steady like a heartbeat in the darkened night, folding around you. You feel the weight of silence tighten, wrapping itself between you and the figure, pressing against your skin like the thick desert air, slow to settle, but relentless. The ember's flame dims, then pulses once more, a final, fragile beacon against the deepening black. A bundle pressed close to the stranger moves faintly, a sigh, a slow breath rising and falling in quiet harmony. Your own breath slows, dipping deep into the dust-laden stillness, as if tasting the night itself. The dry chill settles beneath your tunic like a cool ghost, threading between clammy skin and fabric. The faint trace of smoke lingers still, shifting in fleeting eddies around you both, as though the land remembers fires long since faded, yet never forgotten. A soft, scuffling sound draws your attention, a barely perceptible movement of fabric brushing against gravel. The figure lifts a slow gaze to the horizon, where shadows blur and deepen into an unknowable expanse. You trace the faint flicker just beyond, a glimmer like cooled embers drifting on a breath of wind. A silent call in the void. The night air hums with possibility and restraint, an untouched tension pressing upon each measured heartbeat. You step forward tentatively, the cracked earth yielding underfoot, the rasp of dry leaves mingling with faint whispers carried on the breeze. The ember flickers, once again, casting a silver glow that reveals more of the figure's weathered face. Lines carved by sun and trial, eyes that hold storms held quietly at bay. You reach out your hand, drawn as if by the slow pull of some unseen thread, your fingers brushing the soft warmth just beyond reach. The ember's glow pulses, steady and sure, illuminating the silent offering turned your way. A slow promise woven from the night's fragile light and the unspoken weight of these dry lands. Then abruptly, a new sound breaks the stillness, a low, rhythmic tapping rising from behind the figure's shadow, steady and insistent, yet cautious. Your breath catches. The sounds are not yours alone. Something moves beyond the reach of the glow, a presence emerging slowly from the fold of darkness. You glance toward the edge of the village, where the cracked earth meets deeper shadows. Your pulse quickens, a quiet tremor threading through your limbs as shapes begin to shift subtly in the cooling night. The faint scent of smoke thickens, rising like an urgent flame, unfurling through the air with the steady insistence of a slow drumbeat. The figure beside you tightens their hold on the ember, eyes flickering with a new resolve. Your heart braces against the silence, thickening all around, as a faint whisper, soft and deliberate, threads through the air. A single word murmured just beyond comprehension, a slow beckon, folding into the vastness between you. Come. The ember's faint glow flickered once more between the figure's weathered fingers, casting gentle shadows that danced softly over the cracked earth and worn stones of the village. You felt the weight of the long, dry day settle deeper into your bones. But here, beside this quiet visitor, the oppressive heat seemed to soften, folding into a delicate calm. The bundle cradled at the figure's side shifted slightly, a small breath carried on the cool night air, fragile but steady. Time stretched between you, measured, slow, like the fading pulse of a distant heartbeat. For a moment, the two of you stood suspended, bound in shared quietness and unspoken understanding. Your hand slipped from the rough stone rim of the well, fingers lingering a moment longer, as though reluctant to let go of the cool steadiness beneath your touch. The bucket hung limp by your side, its emptiness mirroring the hollow spaces long etched across the land. But beneath the hollow, something tentative began to grow, a thread of possibility, as subtle as the moth fading into the dark, yet strong enough to pull at the edges of your consciousness. The figure met your gaze, eyes faintly reflecting that slow ember light, reflecting hardship and hope, both. They spoke again, voice low and steady, carrying no demand, only an invitation formed from the brittle hope of survival. Come. You took a slow step forward, feeling the worn earth crunch softly beneath your sandals, dry grass brushing lightly against your ankles. The air still tinged with dust and smoke, tasted less harsh now, a breath drawn deeper, as if the night had softened just enough to cradle a fragile welcome. You matched the figure's pace, and as you moved into the veil of shadows together, the shape near their side revealed itself clearly at last. A child, bundled tight, small and warm against the chill that had begun to spread. The village, once still and parched, seemed to exhale with you, its aged wooden doors creaking softly in the night breeze. The faint chorus of crickets wove a comforting thread, threading through the cracked walls and empty pathways. Smoke curled faintly in the distance, a reminder that life persisted beyond the drought's cruel touch. As you followed the figure deeper into the night, the cracked earth gradually gave way to patches of brittle grass, stubborn spots of green that clung to the edges of forgotten wells and dry fields. Somewhere not far ahead, the renewed scent of damp soil teased the air, promising the slow return of water and the healing it carried. In the quiet, you felt the weight of the burdens shared between all who remained: exhaustion, loss, and the hard-won resolve to continue. Yet beneath that, subtle but undeniable, was the pulse of renewal, a breath drawn long and slow, gathering strength in the stillness. The child's soft breathing mingled with the night, a tender counterpoint to the harshness that had ruled the day. You found your own breath deepening, the dryness in your throat easing as the promise of dawn crept quietly over the horizon. The ember in the stranger's hand flared gently once more before fading into a faint glow, sending a last ripple of warmth into the cooling dusk. Ahead, the land stretched wide and open, but no longer barren and void. Traces of life wove through the softened earth, the shimmer of water where none had been, the faint stir of leaves catching the gentle wind. The horizon held a quiet confidence now, a slow unfolding that promised more than just survival, but a tentative rebirth. You glanced toward the figure and the child, the shared light between you, a fragile bond forged in the midst of drought and despair. No grand declarations were spoken, only the steady rhythm of slow steps echoing softly on dry ground, the quiet acknowledgement that this was the beginning of something new. For a long moment, the three of you moved together beneath the dome of stars, wrapped in the embrace of the cool night and the whispered song of the earth reclaiming itself. And as the first pale rays of morning shimmered, brushing the village with gentle gold, a sense of calm settled deep within your chest, a stillness tempered by hope, a silent promise held in the tender balance between what had been and all that would come. Tonight, under the vast, patient sky, the world turned softly once more, and you at last felt the weight of the drought begin to lift. The cracked earth was still there, marked and weathered, but no longer empty. Life stirred quietly in the breath between shadows, in the soft glow of a dying ember, and in the fragile warmth of a child's steady breath beside you. And with the dawn breaking over the horizon, you stepped forward, not into certainty, but into the gentle unfolding of a future waiting patiently to be shaped. The night's silence gave way slowly to light, and your heart, too, found something long lost, a quiet peace, steady and enduring, tucked beneath the vastness of the waking sky.